Welcome to Blueprints for Brilliance Coaching Insights, a podcast by coaches for coaches. Our guests share their hard-won wisdom to help you grow your coaching business and create a life of success. So get ready to unlock the blueprints to your success. Welcome, everyone, to our newest episode. I appreciate you being here as always, and I am excited to speak today with Kylee Leota. She is here from all the way across the world at a very early hour. Her company is Elements for Success, and she is a leadership coach. So thank you so much for joining me today, Kylee.
Thank you so much for having me. And yes, I always say hello from the future. And it's a beautiful rainy day here in the future currently, but I'm excited to be here and have this beautiful, wonderful conversation.
Fantastic. Yes. So leadership coaching, let's talk about how did you become a leadership coach? Kind of what was your journey to where you are now?
Yeah, so I have probably a bit of a different trajectory to most people, I guess. So I started out in education and was in education for a very, very long time. And it was one of those journeys where I actually had, this idealistic view when I started out around, well, I'm just going to teach. That's what I want to do. And then I want to, just love all the people and love the kids. And that's me. I'm done. That's the whole thing. So I wasn't particularly aspirational, never wanted to be a leader as such. And very, very early within like 6 months, I realized that I couldn't get influence where I was to get the changes that I needed to have. And I'm like, that's curious. I'm very curious about that. So who are those people that can make the changes? And I recognized that it was the leaders in those positions that had the most influence to get those changes. So that started a little bit of a journey for me. So I was very fortunate. I was a very early leader. I don't know about how other countries do it, but in Australia, we kind of do it a bit backwards. So we give the person the job as a leader on the skills that they have without any leadership training. It's kind of a bit asked about, right? So we don't get any leadership concepts until we get in there. And then they're like, oh, you don't know the things. And then, so that meant for a bit of a roller coaster ride in my leadership journey, if I was being really honest, because there were some days where I was like nailing it. There are other days where I was failing it. And it was not because I wasn't well intentioned. It wasn't because I didn't have the skills to be a good leader. It's the fact that I didn't know what I didn't know in that particular time. So then that was a bit of a deep dive in terms of what were people missing in that. So over the course of my journey in education, I moved up the leadership ladder. But one of my things was around helping people lead wherever they were at, because, systems are complicated and political, and people give away their power when they say, well, which is what I did, I can't change anything here because I don't have the position or the authority to do anything. So that was a revelation for me. So I went on this journey of helping people lead where they're at. And that was actually true. I was working with 5-year-olds that I was teaching leadership skills to, obviously at age and stage appropriate. It's because self-leadership is the first part of that leadership journey. You can't lead others unless you can lead yourself. So then that moved through. So I had a government job for a very long time. And what I recognized in my own leadership journey, my own personal leadership journey, was that the older I got, the more in the system I got, the more I recognized how important my true north was to me, and understanding when things aligned and when they didn't. So in 2020, I pivoted and took the learning that I had, which is kind of initiated by me having an injury that made me take some time off work, that gave me space to think and conceptualize about, was this really where I wanted to be and where I wanted to go? And that conceptualized. And then I went, what do I love about what I do? And I loved building capacity in others to lead. And so that pivoted into a journey into a coaching career that is continuing to grow and grow and grow. And I'm so blessed and privileged and honored to be able to do the work that I do to support the clients that I do.
I love that. I love that so much. And it's so true. People who do a really good job in like a big business, they get promoted to like manager, like you said, or a leadership position, but no one's ever trained them. They just said, oh, good job. Here, now you're in charge of a whole bunch of people. That's a different job.
It is a different job. And then when we fail, they go, oh, well, you're failing as a leader. No, I'm failing because I didn't have the knowledge I needed to be a good leader. Some people innately know those things. And, I've done a very big deep dive, and my leadership training came from my own drive to be a better leader, as opposed to, hey, here's the process that we do for aspiring leaders. And look, some companies do that a little bit better now, but certainly when I was starting out, that certainly wasn't the case. So I want to make sure that people have a better experience than I did.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you were teaching young people, because I think sometimes those leaders are there, but they keep getting pushed back. You're too, I don't know, strong-willed, and they kind of get labeled with things instead of, letting them, that's their natural talent. That's who they are. That's how they are. You just need to redirect it and help them shape it a little bit.
For sure. And look, I was learning leadership, by that time I was saying to young people, like, and I worked with a lot of at-risk young people that could use their powers for good, or they could use their powers for evil. Like they were sitting on that precipice, and they had really great attributes that they just needed guidance on. And I'm like, mate, if I could teach you this lesson at 15, 16, instead of learning it at 40 like I did, I just think you would have such a better opportunity. I'm learning this now, and I look back and go, oh my gosh, how different my life would have been had I learned it back there. So use the wisdom of people that care for you, that are giving you this opportunity to learn. Because these are skills that I certainly didn't learn at school. Many of us in our generation did not. It was about that opportunity because they're going to have a better trajectory. Because what I see is leaders getting into positions get stuck or get put on performance plans because they're like, well, they're an adult and they've been in this position, so they should know. And one of the first things I always talk to the leaders that are saying that to me is, why should they know? What evidence do you have that they've had the opportunity to learn that skill to be able to do that thing? We just assume because you're a grown up and because you've got a leadership position that you have had access and opportunity to learn that skill. That's an assumption that is often false. That sets teams up for failure and leaders up for failure.
How can you assume someone knows something when A, you haven't asked them, and B, they may never have learned that? Some of it they may know innately or inherently because that's who they are. But yeah, there's a lot more to it than just going with your strengths.
Yeah, and I think, oh, well, they've been a leader for 5 years, they should know. And I'm like, well, again, that assumes that they've had the opportunity to learn that. Their previous leader may not have given them that opportunity. So we can't make those, if we assume positive intention, unconditional positive regard, as we say in the coaching world, then we assume that people are doing the best that they can with what they have. So if they're not performing well, then maybe there's something that they're missing that's stopping them from being that best, what they need to be, but they're still doing the best with the tools they have in that moment.
So tell us a little bit about what type of leaders do you work with? Are they typically in big organizations? Are they small organizations? Are they a particular type of industry?
I'm a little bit broad in the sense that I do a little bit of everything. So I've done some executive leadership in government work, not-for-profit CEOs and boards, also aspiring leaders. And so dribs and drabs also going into corporate organizations. And everything's a little bit different. But because of my background, so my background in education was complex behavior, disability, and trauma. So I have a real behaviorist background. So what happens is I can go in and read the room pretty quickly about what's the mask people are wearing and what's going on behind the mask. And that is similar across any organization, and then help people understand what that needs to look like and bring those teams together collectively to get better outcomes.
I love that. Well, tell us a little bit about some clients that you've worked with, kind of where they were when they came to you, what help they needed, and then how you kind of worked with them. Was it, one-on-one? Was it a group? And then how they kind of went on to success.
Yeah, so I was working with an executive leadership team where the leader actually called me, and that scenario we were talking about a bit earlier, they had someone on their exec leadership team, and they're like, "You're kind of like their last chance, Kylie. If this doesn't work, we're going to put them on managing underperformance and manage them out." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, no worries." So I go in, and so I met with the team individually first, and then we met as a group and did some work around that. We came to understand was that person had some historical trauma issues from previous leadership. So had not been, even though the current leader was really supportive, they were really struggling to take on board and trust that support because of their historical stuff. So once we navigated through that, we then came back together collectively as a group with our individual learnings and understanding of self. And then I, facilitated this beautiful group conversation that ended up in lots of tears, but really those really momentous aha moments where they went, what would be your communication preference and what would happen if I need to give you some feedback? How would you like me to give you that feedback so that they could identify what that looked like for them? And through this conversation, I just remember sitting there and one person feeling courageous enough and safe enough to say, "Hey, when you do this, I feel like that." And that other person just stood there and went, "I had absolutely no idea that you felt like that. And I am so sorry. That is absolutely not my intention." And what we saw was this really underperforming team. When I first met with them, they were going, "This person's a problem, this person's a problem, this person's a problem." Then they just collectively came together. And I just saw this beautiful transformation. And whenever I saw them individually or collectively, or I get messages going, "Oh my God, Kylie, you can't even imagine how nice this feels to do that." I then worked with another team within their organization that had another staff member that was also going to be put on managing underperformance. She ended up being the 2IC. So she moved from being the least trusted person on the team for the leader to being one of this person of trust and confidence because they did this work to identify that. And that was just magic because that meant that she then had somebody else in the team that she could rely on. And this is a person that she felt like was out to get her originally. So we went from that to, oh my gosh, she's one of my most trusted advisors now. And I really appreciate and support and value her, what she has to offer. And that collectively changed that whole team dynamic.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah, it's so interesting how we can perceive a situation or a person and their intention, and it can be totally off base.
Oh, for sure. And I had another client that came to see me and she wanted to go for a promotion and she came in and she was really irate because her boss said, "No, I won't release you to go for this promotion." And she was like so upset and she's like, "What did I do?" and all this stuff. And we unpacked it. And really what it was her leader felt like she was the only person that could do the job. So I said, "Well, what do we need to do here for you to then, what was a part of your leadership journey that you were missing, which was the capacity building part?" So once we identified that, within 2 months she was released and went off to another promotion. She's had since two more promotions since, understanding that it wasn't about anything that she did. It was around the fact that she hadn't done the work to make herself, we as leaders, we like to make ourselves a little bit invaluable at times, and we like to make ourselves us the go-to people. And so, because that makes us feel good, doesn't it? It makes us feel like, if we're the ones that can put out the fires, then we're going to be needed in an organization, but it can backfire on us. And I remember her coming to see me one day and she was upset because she'd gone to a training and no one had called her. They said, "Brilliant. Then you've done exactly the job that you were supposed to do. You built your capacity within your team enough that they didn't need you, that they could manage the ship without you in that day." And she's like, "This feels weird." And I'm like, "Yeah, but it's going to give you the opportunity." And within, like I said, within a month, she had the opportunities to be promoted out because she had done that work and because she could step out of her ego and needing to be that person and recognize that her job, the beauty was that she'd left a legacy where the ship could run in her absence. That's actually what made her a good leader, and that she's been able to take those lessons into those future promotional opportunities that she had.
It's amazing. Yeah, such a confidence builder. And I, when you were talking, I was thinking it's all ego, isn't it? And sometimes you just need to recognize that and then switch it around and say, but it's not an insult to you. It's a compliment.
100%. And it's really funny. Ego is a funny thing, isn't it? When we sit there and actually question that and go, hang on, is my ego in the driver's seat right now? Or is that the reason that I'm feeling the way that I'm feeling? Because they said that and I've taken that intention that they're saying this about me, or they don't believe I can do this, or they do this, or what's actually going on here? And when we operate from a place of motivation versus fear, the behavior might look the same, but the outcome is very different.
Yeah. And it's wonderful to have people like you who can help them decipher that. Because I know in my immediate space, my husband is really good about that. I'll say, let me tell you about this situation. Can you tell me if I'm being, if it's my ego driven or if it's actually something that's, unfair or something I should be upset about?
Yeah, and one of my mantras is that everybody needs a safe space for brave and courageous conversations. And I think one of the challenges in leadership, and certainly this was my challenge in leadership in my own journey, was I didn't want my boss to think that I was incapable of doing something if I said I was struggling with something. So that held me back, even though, I mean, look, I had good leaders and not great leaders, but even the ones that I really liked and respected, I didn't want them to think less of me by me not knowing how to do something or me feeling like I was feeling overwhelmed. And I certainly didn't want my team to know. So what I really pride myself on is being that external person that can be that safe space for those brave and courageous conversations to go, oh my God, I don't even know what's going on here today, or this is really terrible, or I think my ego is really getting in the way here. I don't really know how to recalibrate that. Or I think I stuffed up, or all of those kind of things, so that we can get it out. And now we can recalibrate the strategy moving forward that is in alignment with who they are, with that self-awareness now going into that next phase of their journey.
Yeah, that can be a terrible place to be stuck, can it? I can't say I don't know how to do this, so I'm going to figure out how to do this. But should I be doing that? Is that really my job? And, I want to make a good impression on my boss, but yet I should be working, on what I'm supposed to work on. It's a very weird balance.
Well, and I think also, I don't know about anybody else, but the voice inside my head, my inner critic is so strong that sometimes I have to get it out. Well, I have to get it out. I have to have a safe person to talk that thought out loud, because if I listen to the inner critic in my head, it will just put me on a downward spiral 99% of the time. And I will just perseverate and get stuck in that loop. Whereas saying it out loud to someone first allows you to get clear and articulate, is that what I meant to say? Or, oh, now I've said it out loud. What I think I meant was this, or this is what I actually think I was struggling with. So it helps, and then allows you to recalibrate and look at, okay, so what do I want from this out? What's the outcome I want? And what's the best pathway to do that? And allow you to problem solve and, go, okay, well, if I go down path A, what would that look like? If I went down path B, what would that look like? what's going to get the best outcome. And usually, the goal is to get the win-win, right? Versus what I need versus what they need.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's so great that you are supporting people who need that, because, they don't always have. I'm fortunate that I have a business partner, and work very differently, but we have the same moral fiber, and values. And
Yeah.
it's great, because sometimes I'll say to her, this is what I want to say to someone, but how is that received? And so, because sometimes you just don't know.
No, absolutely. In my practice, we do a lot of perspective taking. So it's around, okay, so that's your perspective. What could be some other perspectives around how that might be received? And I had a leadership client, and she would say things like, well, I encourage my team to have a break all of the time, make sure that they take care of themselves. I said, okay, so do you have lunch? And she goes, absolutely not. Like, I'm too busy for that. And I said, so from a different perspective, why do you think your team aren't maybe as engaged? Could it be that what you want to say to them is different to what you're doing? So now they're not sure if it's actually okay or not. And she went, oh, I've never thought about it that way. Understanding that intention can be different to our impact.
Yeah. And I think a lot of leaders, they're busy. They've got all these
sure.
things coming at them. And so they're not always paying attention to how they're perceived or how they're received.
No, but sometimes that's why we're not getting the momentum, because there's a difference between what we're saying and what we're doing. So there's a misalignment. So staff are unsure. So we have to be able to, she also had a situation where she would say, I really want my staff to tell me what they think, they genuinely think of a situation. And I said, well, why do you think they don't? I said, how does your meeting structure go? She goes, well, I stand up and I tell them the thing, and then I ask for their feedback. I said, so they comply with what you want because you have a presence about you. That means whether that's your goal or not, I would go, oh, okay, no worries. Have you ever considered asking their input first and then giving your opinion? And completely changed the response she was getting just by tweaking things, right?
So would you say if somebody were in a position that they were stuck, it sounds like the first thing that they should do is see if they have someone around them that they can be open and honest with, whose feedback they would respect and who would tell them the truth?
Yeah, so I think there's two parts of that. So I talk about an ecosystem. Have you got the right people in your ecosystem that can support you to the level that you need? Because sometimes people support you to the level of their comfort and what works for them, as opposed to where you need to go. The second part of it is Tasha Urich's work around there is the unloving critic, the people that are going to find fault in everything that you do. The uncritical lover, the people that are going to find no fault in anything that you do. You're like, oh, I'm going to go shoot my business partner. And they're like, oh my God, they must totally deserve it, right? And you're like, that's not helpful either. And then you've got the loving critic, the person who is going to champion you, that's going to be your biggest supporter, but also be a safe space for you to challenge your thoughts to be a better version of you. So we need to surround ourselves with loving critics, and not everybody, not all feedback is created equal, and not all people are created equal in that space. So I think it's really important to discern the right people. And I had an experience, I was working in an organization, and my colleague who I adored, she was told to go for a position that she then didn't get. And I remember she got on the phone and she hung up the phone, and I'm like, did they offer you feedback? And she said, yes. I said, what did you say? She goes, I don't want their feedback. And I said, oh. And at the time, I'm like, you have to take on board all of the things, right? Which made me twist into like a pretzel shape trying to please everybody because everyone's got a different idea. And she said, you have to respect the person giving it. And I'm like, light bulb. And that led me moving forward is, okay, so this person's given me feedback. First of all, let me step back. Do I respect the person that's giving it in the sense that it might be valid? Or do I feel like they're that uncritical lover, that they just find unloving critic. They find fault in everything that I do. Or are they going to be that person, so I think there are two things: having a loving critic and making sure that your ecosystem is in alignment with where you're going, so that you have the right people around you that you can go to when you need to.
Mm-hmm. I love that. It reminds me of networking and why I do networking, because my immediate friends and family know nothing about being an entrepreneur. They're not interested, and that's fine. But I need that energy, and I need that environment as well of other people who are excited about building their business and marketing and growing. And, so it's so important.
Oh, for sure. And you can love your family, but then, they can't be all the things that you need them to be, right? So you have to have an ecosystem is beautiful and fragile, and it has different parts to it that make it work, right? So it's about making sure that you have that ecosystem in harmony and in balance for you and what you need, and understanding that it's important for you to discern who you let into your ecosystem, because they have the ability to destroy your ecosystem if you're not aware.
Yeah, absolutely. So it sounds like you work with individuals and small teams. Is that right?
Yeah, so I go in and do executive teams, and I do whole organization training as well. But what I find is I can build somebody, if you've got a team member, I can build their capacity, but unless the leadership space is on point, then they will hit a ceiling at some point. So I'd love to go in and do the top part of that as well, make sure the leadership team are in flow and in alignment with where they want to go so they can then support the capacity building of the people coming through the organization. Because when you do that individual, I've seen that time and time again, build capacity with somebody, they'll hit a ceiling. And in order for them to grow, they have to move. So it'd be really great if the organizations and the leadership within organizations understood that philosophy, and then we can build, because we want to keep good people in our organizations. And we want to give them those opportunities to grow and flourish in their own journey. That's what we need.
Yeah. And you spoke to that earlier where you said, you were in a group and everybody was pointing, saying that person is the problem. When it turned around, when you worked with them, all of a sudden that person is the one everybody goes to.
For sure.
Incredible.
But it was misaligned assumptions, I guess, that were causing that. And what happens is when you are in survivor mode, we're often very reactive. We're not taking that time to respond. And sometimes it's about, I talk about this idea of the cartoon Wile E. Coyote. And Wile E. Coyote, I love him. He has all the willingness in the world, but he doesn't really have the skill. And then if you imagine Roadrunner on the other side of that canyon, Roadrunner has the will and the skill. And so between that is a skills gap. And so what's the skills gap that we need to close? And often we think of the skills as in the hard skill of the laborer and the things like that. But the skill gap often that needs to be closed in leadership is communication, like safety, circling back and repairing, feedback. That's often the skill gap trap that people have fallen into that they don't have, but they need support to develop on their journey.
Yeah, I love that. So tell me about all of these framed awards behind you.
So some of them are certifications of additional coaching because I believe life is about a continuous improvement journey. I just happen to be passionate about doing courses, but I don't think you necessarily need the certificates, but I think understanding that if you are open to the fact that life is an infinite learning journey, then you're open to infinite opportunities and infinite possibilities. And then I've been a finalist in some awards based in Australia, which I'm very blessed to have been nominated for. And, and it comes from a place of wanting to serve. So I've been nominated by clients, I've been nominated by different people which is, such a beautiful blessing because that just tells me that the impact that I'm having is serving people in different ways.
Yeah, I have no doubt that you're making a huge difference in this world. So we're grateful for coaches like you. So two questions left. One is, how would you like people to reach out to you if they're saying, oh my gosh, Kylee, you're speaking my language. I need your help, or my team needs your help, or my company needs your help. How should they reach out to you?
So one is my website, elements4success.com.au. And you can find me on LinkedIn, Kylee, Kylee, thanks, Mum, Leota, Leota. And on Facebook and Insta, it's Elements for Success that you will be able to find me on, across all the different platforms as well. And yeah, I would love to reach out and connect and talk to people about what this could look like for them. And it's about acknowledging where you are in your journey right now, and then where do you want to go and what are the steps along the way. And I think that's that infinite learning journey that I talk a lot about.
Yeah, I'm a big lifelong learner. I love it. You just have to make sure that some people who like to learn implement as well. And don't just learn.
Oh my goodness me, that's so much true. So I don't know if people are aware, but there's a concept in psychology called dialectical behavior therapy. And it's an idea about helping people with intense emotions or improve relationships. But I have a different DBT, I call it diagnosis by TikTok. And it's where people jump on and learn all of these things about self-awareness and how to feel their feels. But the bit that they haven't learned is how to implement that. So we take that theory and put it into practice in an effective way. So it's one thing to learn lots of theory, but if you don't know how to implement, you're not going to be as successful. So that's one of the things I think I do really well is help people take some theoretical knowledge and be a bit of a conduit to put it into practice in a way that makes meaning for them, because there's so much, we can't plead that we don't know anymore. I mean, there's so much information coming, but how do you discern what's the right information for you at your stage, where you're going, for your organization, for your team, and how to implement that in a way that's going to get you the outcome that you want?
I love that. I love that. And I don't think what you're doing was around 20, 30 years ago. You know what I mean? So I'm so grateful that you are here and that you are teaching things that are really helping people, helping organizations, and, changing people's lives.
Yeah. And that's what it's all about, isn't it? Like the business name that I have, Elements for Success, is based off Earl Nightingale's definition of success, that success is a progressive realization of a worthy goal or ideal. And for me, that's individually, team, and organizationally, it's that progressive realization of what that goal or ideal is that they want to create. And then there's lots of different elements. And so I can go into one organization and they need this element, and I can go to a different organization and they need this element. And the beauty part from, as you can see from the thousands of certificates behind me, is I love to learn all the things so that I can bespoke that and tailor make a strategy that's going to work for your particular situation, individually, team, or organizationally.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So I have one last question for you, please. If you could provide one tip to make the world a better place, what would that be?
I think I could go on all day, so I will just pick one. I think we've sort of touched on that continuous improvement journey, is that what I see in life is, and I've seen this many, many times, you go into an organization and people are like, oh my gosh, here's another new initiative, or there's another new learning, or oh my gosh, they're making us adapt this one, another thing. And I think if we can conceptualize the idea of infinite learning, and each of the letters of infinite is its own pillar. It's understanding that it always starts with you, your own. The first pillar in infinite is identity. So understanding yourself to be able to lead yourself, to be able to lead others. But I think if we get our head around the fact that when I wake up in the morning, my goal is to do a good job. I don't wake up in the morning and lay in bed and go, how can I be terrible today? So if I give myself the grace to go that I'm doing the very best I can today, but I would like to be a better version of myself tomorrow than I am today, that's going to involve continuous learning. So if I'm open to that process and the fact that everyone's doing the best they can, and when you know more, you can do better, I think that allows us to not have as much resentment about having to take on this new initiative or this new learning or this new thing that I have to get my head around, because you're like, okay, well, this is what we're doing because I want to be better than I was yesterday. So I can do that by having this open-mindedness around this process rather than feeling resentful that I have to take on board new learning all of the time.
So infinite journey and open-mindedness, kind of what I would put that all into. Well, Kylee, this has been so wonderful. I love getting to know you. I love hearing all of the successes and all the wonderful work you're doing. So thank you so much for joining me today.
I am so grateful for you having me on, and I hope those lessons are takeaway. I would love, for the audience to reach out and let me know what lesson resonated. That would be fantastic.
Excellent. Well, I know I'll reach out to you on LinkedIn, and I'm sure they will too. And we'll put all the links in the show notes below so that you can all have an easy way to reach out to Kylee. So thanks again for joining me today. Have an amazing day.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us today on Blueprints for Brilliance Coaching Insights. We hope you're leaving this episode with inspiration to take your coaching business and your life to the next level. If you found value in this episode, we would love it if you would subscribe and share it with someone else who you think might benefit from hearing it. Thanks, and we'll see you in the next episode.